You've heard of underdog stories, but you've never heard one where the hero is a coward, the army is too big, and the secret weapon is a clay pot. Yeah, this is the story of Gideon. And if you don't know it, you need to hear it. So Gideon was a farmer, just an average Joe, really, who heard God tell him he was gonna be a mighty warrior. And he's like, wait, what? I'm a coward. My whole life has been one long exercise in running away from things. I don't even own a weapon. You want me to be a warrior, a man of war? I'm not even sure I believe you. So he asks God for a sign. And God gives him this series of ridiculously specific instructions that end up proving God's power and Gideon's faith. But the first thing God tells him to do is to assemble his army. And this is where things get weird. See, Gideon had 32,000 men in his clan, which may not sound like a lot to us today, but back then that was a huge army. Like you wouldn't have assembled that many men unless you were going to war with another nation. But God tells Gideon that's way too many soldiers. He says, I'm gonna judge Israel, but I'm not gonna judge them because of your army. Because look, if you and these men go off to fight, you guys are just gonna not take all the credit for winning, and you're gonna say we did it because we were so strong or because we had so many soldiers, right? And then I'm not gonna get any glory out of this deliverance I'm about to do for Israel. So you gotta cut your army down to 300 men. That way there's no doubt that it was God who won the battle, not you and your big army. So that's what they do. They whittle the army down from 32,000 to 300. And that still seems like way too many men to some of us, but God says that's still way too many. So he lets 22,000 of them go home. And this is what's left. 300 men, 300 scared, fearful men who are hiding in the mountains not wanting to go into battle. And yet those 300 are the ones that God looks at and says, you guys are the only ones I'm gonna use. You're the only 300 I'm gonna use. Why? Because while the other men were afraid and wanted to go home, these 300 stayed behind. They were vigilant. They were alert. They were ready to do what God had called them to do. So God tells them their mission, which is basically to sneak into the enemy camp, smash some clay jars, blow some trumpets and shout really loud. And it's the most ridiculous battle plan ever. I mean, really, it sounds more like a prank than a battle plan. But they do exactly what God tells them, and here's what happens. They go and surround the camp. They smash the jars. They blow the trumpets and they shout, and the entire army turns on itself and flees. The 300 men didn't even have to raise a sword. They just watched as God caused the enemy to turn on itself and run away. So why is this story in the Bible? What's the point of it? Well, the main point, to me, is that true power doesn't come from numbers or strength or skill or even strategy. True power comes from faith and obedience. It's God who wins battles, not us. Our job is just to trust Him and follow His ridiculous, crazy instructions. The second point, and maybe this is even more important, is that God doesn't need us to win battles. He simply allows us to participate in the victories He's already won. In fact, sometimes He allows us to participate in order to get the credit, so to speak, so that we can experience the victory and tell people about it. Other times, like with Gideon and his 300, He doesn't allow us to take any credit. We don't get to say we won the battle. God still gets all the glory. This is good news for us because it means that even when we feel weak or unqualified or scared, like when Gideon felt like a coward, like when David felt like a nobody, like when Esther felt like she was unworthy, we can still be used by God. He doesn't need us. He wants us. If He wants to use us, He will equip us. He will train us. He will give us everything we need. And we simply have to be willing to obey. So what's the lesson? Don't ever let the enemy convince you that you're too weak or too small or too afraid or too unqualified to do what God has called you to do. Remember, God doesn't need us. He just wants us. And when we say yes, when we step out in faith, no matter how afraid we are, no matter how impossible the situation seems, God will fight our battles for us. And we'll get to watch as He wins.